Right. Second up, we got Adam, who's going to talk to us about object-oriented theming with Pinto. And thanks to Adam for stepping in and covering at the last minute for your colleagues.
No worries. Cool. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Today we're going to talk about object-oriented theming with Pinto. So just a little bit of a warning. It's pretty code-heavy, but hopefully that's expected with a title like that. So let's get started. Quickly, who am I? I'm Adam. Father to two beautiful boys, one of the tech leads at Previous Next. Been doing Drupal for over 14 years. I'm also a subsystem maintainer for block content. And you've probably seen me as AC Bramley on Drupal.org or Slack. Today we're going to be introducing Pinto, covering the basics and looking at how to actually theme with Pinto. So what is Pinto? It's a new module written by Daniel Phin from PNX. It introduces a new structured way for theming in Drupal. And it's so good that all of our new projects at PNX use Pinto, and we're even retrofitting it into existing projects as well. I wrote a 2-part blog post, which I'll be hopefully extending this year on the PNX website. So go to this QR code for heaps more information than we have time to cover today. But let's go through a few other things. So as I said, Pinto actually stands for Previous Next Theme Objects. It's a framework for object-oriented theming, automatically converting theme objects, which are just PHP classes, into Drupal theme definitions, render arrays, automatically generating theme libraries, and all sorts of other fun stuff. Developers are interacting directly with PHP classes rather than render arrays, and there's a really large focus here on reusability and maintainability. Pinto is really good for sort of component level content. So your block content, your paragraph types, media, random custom entity types that you've implemented. Not really recommended for full page content like Node. That's much better suited for Layout Builder, Experience Builder in the future. However, you can still use Pinto for specific view modes for any entity type. So taking a look at an example between a render array and Pinto. At the top, we have a regular Drupal render array where you've got just some random keys that you need to remember. You need to manually attach libraries or cacheability. Down the bottom is basically the equivalent using a Pinto object. Obviously, it's one line, so it's very easy to remember. It's dry, and we have strict type checking and things like that as well, easily baked in. So first of all, to set up Pinto, it's a zero config module. So there's no UI or config settings or anything like that. It just works by automatically discovering theme objects via an PHP enum, and that enum just gets placed into a special namespace, which is Pinto, inside of your module. Your theme objects get registered as cases on the enum, and then the enum can provide additional logic, such as template discovery, CSS and JavaScript pathing, and yeah, you can easily integrate this with something like Storybook or another design system. We use the components module to register a custom Twig namespace, for example, to point to templates in Storybook, so they get reused directly in Drupal. Again, explained in much more detail in the blog post, but having a look at what an enum looks like. As I said, each case on the enum represents a component, denoted by the definition attribute there. And then we can use additional attributes for more logic. In this case, we've got this CA, which is the Cancer Australia website. All of these examples are going to piggyback off that website that I just built. So these attributes can do other things, like this one is CA component is telling Pinto where the template is in relation to the Storybook directory. So let's look at a component example. This is a card component on the Cancer Australia website. In this scenario, a card has an image, a title, and a description. And any good design system is going to use this card in a bunch of different ways with the same template. Maybe it's a block in Layout Builder. Maybe it's a bunch of nodes, tiles, or a grid of news articles, so on and so forth. and you get this Twig template from your front ender, and I want you to kind of think about how you'd normally go about theming this with Drupal. Maybe you've got a block content bundle, special bundle Twig template where you chuck the card class in, and then you got a formatter to wrap the image in a div and the title, and then you got this like sort of closely resembling template that your front end has given you, but you got this Drupal div soup all around, and it's causing layout bugs, and you got theme logic and config and all over the place. So the goal of Pinto is really to consolidate all that in one area, which is the theme object, and reuse that everywhere the card is rendered on the site, and most importantly, reusing the template directly from that your front end has built. So basically, we don't want anything else dealing with rendering of the component apart from in the actual theme object itself. So looking at the anatomy of a theme object, I've collapsed everything to make it a little bit more readable, but it's still a little bit overwhelming. So let's go through everything one by one. We've got attributes up the top. We've got some traits being used. We've got some constructors and so on. So let's look at that one by one. So we've got attributes on objects. Slots, in this case, kind of maps to theme variables. You can actually automatically derive slots from constructor properties to reduce boilerplate even more. We've got things like CSS and JavaScript attributes. So Pinto will generate theme libraries for you based on CSS and JavaScript, and then automatically attach those libraries to your render array for you. And yeah, the possibilities are endless with these. Then you got the constructor and your factory methods. So your constructor is sort of like, as I said, you can map those to the slots, or you can have additional ones in there. Basically, whatever you need to build your theme objects. And then we've kind of come up with this pattern of having these factory methods. So in this example, it's taking an entity and then creating a theme object from it. So a card block is being turned into a theme object. And then you've got this build method. This is what gets called when the object is invoked, or when it's called as a function. This is where you sort of set those slots from whatever properties you have in your class. And this can also completely be automated as well by Pinto. In this case, though, the image class property is another theme object in Pinto. So we've got to invoke that using the brackets. We're also going to be looking at automating that sort of thing as well. So you can have nested theme objects and all that good stuff. Again, way more detail on the blog post. So input, output, everything's a render array at the end of the day. So Pinto is generating a render array for you from your theme object. So on the left, we have the creation of a theme object with some, just some example content. On the right, we're calling or invoking that object by calling it as a function, and that is basically what Pinto is outputting for you. So you've got, your libraries are attached automatically and everything like that. Cool. So the next step is actually rendering entities with Pinto. This is a second blog post in the series. Again, heaps more detail there, but let's quickly go through how that's set up. So essentially, we want to bypass most of Drupal's entity rendering system. So we want a custom entity view builder that can do that for us. We have, the way I've set it up, is a generic interface on a bundle class. Then this view builder calls a function on the bundle class if it implements that interface. And the bundle class just has a thin wrapper around the theme object, passing itself into it using those factory methods. All of this was way too much code to include here, so I wrote a module that does it called Bundle Class View Builder. Very original, but it's got a nice little acronym because we love those in Drupal, BCVB. So this also contains a test which integrates BCVB, bundle class attributes, an example bundle class with Pinto. So it sort of has everything set up there, which you could essentially copy and paste, and away you go. And I also did this little flow diagram to show you. I'm not going to go through everything, but it's on the left, you've got sort of cause entity view builder workflow. And on the right, you've got basically what we're doing with BCVB with Pinto, just cutting out a lot of the stuff that you don't really need. And by the way, if you're using Layout Builder and you have anything in your entity view display, it still does all that logic, chucks it all out, and then builds a section. So there is a bug for that as well. So yeah, essentially just we're cutting out a lot of stuff we don't need. And at the end of the day, this is what your bundle class will look like. You'll have a build method that gets the view mode that it's being rendered as, so you can vary by view mode. And then you're just calling a theme object. You also have a should build method, so you can say only use this build method for maybe a card of a node, and for the rest of them, go through the normal Drupal rendering process. So some more examples about how this card is used on Cancer Australia website. So as I said, we have like a block content bundle that gets placed in Layout Builder. This is like a three cards on the homepage. They all run through Pinto. We have a latest news block on the homepage, which just is a block plugin. All we have to do is load some nodes, turn them into cards, and then pass them to another Pinto object, which renders as a news grid. Cool. So recapping really quickly, Pinto allows super fast theming in Drupal with reusable theme objects, automating a lot of the tiresome stuff with render arrays, theme definitions, component libraries, all that kind of stuff. Integrates really nicely with a design system like Storybook. And yeah, I couldn't recommend using this module enough. As I said, we used it on the Cancer Australia website from the ground up, and it was actually astounding how easy it became to theme everything, almost too easy at some points. Cool. And if you have any questions now, ask them now, or yeah, feel free to approach me anywhere here or on Slack. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Very interesting. That solves one of my big gripes. I feel like I've always had with dealing with render arrays, which is I have no idea how to use them.
Right.
And I'm sick of going back to the form and render API docs to remember which array keys I'm allowed to pass in.
Yeah.
So having constructors that I can use much better. I guess the other problem that I worry about is validation. For instance, the example you've got for the card has some pretty basic inputs like type, description, etc. But what about a wrapper around like a form element where you have like a submit handler or things like that, where if you're using a raw render array, you would just be passing in, say, like an array value or a string value, and it's kind of like you only know that you've done a good job when you don't get an error when the right output comes up. But is there potential in the future to say have instead of passing in like PHP primitives, could you have a class system for passing in objects as your values? For instance, instead of passing in a function name for a submit handler or a class name, a method name for a submit handler, you would have to construct a submit handler object and pass that. Sort of what you see like Java or more.
Right. Yeah, I haven't. It's more catered towards rendering content, and not form. But I think it's something we could probably look at. Although, yeah, there's you can pass whatever you want. So going back. So in this case, the image is actually another theme object called picture. Right, yeah. So, I mean, these are obviously contrived examples of what we've actually done, but theme objects they're just PHP classes at the end of the day. You can do whatever you want with them. The form thing is a cool idea, though. Max?
Do you have any pre-built theme objects in the module, like picture?
No, because it completely depends on your, like, how you're rendering everything, right? Ideally, you want those properties to match your theme variables, because then you can use that automatic binding with the slots, and it'll basically reduce all that boilerplate for you. This is like early days of Pinto as well. I think we're basically the only people that use it. at the moment. And there's a lot of stuff Dan and I have been talking about how to improve it, how to give like, so we don't need to talk about all this code that's required to set it up, base classes and automatically invoking nested objects and things like that. So we've got a lot of ideas to make it easier to use. But yeah, I'm really keen to get other people on board. Sorry I hope that answered your question.
All right, I might call it there. So it's 12 o'clock. We've got an hour for lunch now, so back downstairs. And then at 1 o'clock, back up here, we got Waynham talking about Drupal and modern architecture. So enjoy lunch. See you all in an hour.